Despite widespread skepticism, AI is already widely used in the enterprise, often in the form of so called shadow applications outside of traditional IT. This episode of the Tech Field Day podcast features delegates Ryan Booth and Dave Graham discussing the real state of AI adoption in the enterprise with me, Stephen Foskett. Welcome to the Tech Field Day podcast, where we bring together a group of IT technical experts to discuss a single idea about a key concept in our industry. This podcast features a variety of perspectives from members of the Tech Field Day delegate and partner community and is often recorded in association with one of our events. This episode is actually a preview of the AI Field Day event that is happening this week. But don't worry, if you're listening later on, it's hopefully still going to be relevant. Tech Field Day is part of the Futurum Group, and podcast is also published on our sister company's site, TechStrong TV, as well as their over-the-top video app. On this episode, as we head into AI Field Day tomorrow, we're talking about, well, the real world of AI. Essentially, shadow AI is here. People are using this technology. People are experimenting with it. They're pushing it as far as they can. And the enterprise really needs to catch up, or it's going to be left behind. But before we have that conversation, let's meet who's on the podcast today.
Hey there, my name is Dave Graham. I'm the Director of Marketing at ML Commons, which is an industry-led consortium, focuses on AI for everyone. And so I'm really, really glad to be here. I have a long history in building AI stuff, infrastructure, networking, compute, storage, you name it. I've been around for quite some time.
Yeah, cool. Hey, thanks for having me, Stephen. My name is Ryan Booth. It's been a while, but it's good to be on again. I'm excited for what we have coming up this week. I've been in the infrastructure engineering and operations, mostly in networking industry for about 20 years. Moved into software development pretty heavily about 10, 12 years ago. And then within, easily the past 5 years, I've gotten pretty heavy into AI. And then now that's my primary focus, a lot of it with AI software development and bringing AI solutions into enterprises.
And as I said, I'm Stephen Foskett. I am organizer of the AI Field Day event, but I'm also, you'll see a lot from me about AI on our Utilizing Tech and our new Utilizing AI podcast, which actually sneak peek is going to be on Thursday afternoon and then is launching next Wednesday. And of course, on the TechStrong gang. But I go to a lot of these events and I've met a lot of people. And frankly, this is kind of a cool, it's kind of a cool get together here because Ryan, Dave, and I, we've been in this tech community, this tech industry together for, well over a decade, probably going on 2 decades here. And both of you have really been kind of in the weeds for the last, few, making this stuff, building this stuff. And I think that what is interesting here is, on the one hand, we have all of this public understanding of AI. Chat GPT is on everyone's lips. It's the most hyped product, certainly of the century, if not ever. I think Jesus would like a word, but it's pretty hyped. It and yet, I think a lot of people are wondering, how does this get real? How does this really matter in the enterprise? What is this going to do to hardware and software in the tech industry? And yet, the whole time, there's people like you guys, and frankly, like me, who have been looking at this technology and saying, huh, that's cool. Let me play with that. Let me see what I can do with that. And so essentially, whether the enterprise is ready or not, we're going for it. We are going to be deploying AI in various ways. We're going to be deploying, some companies, frankly, Futurum is one of those companies where the CEO said, hey, everybody, use AI. Go. Other companies, I think, are very much like, whoa, 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 I don't know. And so let me just kind of put it to you, Ryan. I'm going to start with you because you kind of suggested this idea, this topic. What is the truth of shadow AI?
Yeah, everybody out there that's curious about it has been playing with it. And if you're seeing what's going on and you're seeing how it can, ChatGPT can help with your workflows, help you write documents with your emails, all these tools that are coming, people are picking them up. And if they're not picking the ones up that came out yesterday, maybe they heard about the new OpenAI browser that came out, the other day, and now they're on top of that. And that guy's doing 100% of your calendar work and your email work. Absolutely, it's creeping in from every corner, and then you have software developers who are building it in with co-pilots and assistants with building software. Network engineers are using it. DevOps engineers are using it to help troubleshoot and dig into issues, build scripts to help fix and clean stuff up. It's coming in everywhere, and IT the solutions that are still there still needing to be a lot more mature than they are currently, and I think that's a lot of the gap that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, to echo your point, Ryan, I mean, a lot of what we're seeing is the adoption curve's been great on a individual basis, right? I can go into Perplexity, I can grab my ChatGPT stuff, and if you're privileged to work for a company that, will buy your license, on a monthly basis or whatever, it's great to get in there and use it. And what you're finding is the friction that exists between the user and these tools is becoming less and less, right? You can go to Lovable, you can, Claude Code or whatever, and you can scroll LinkedIn and find everybody building solutions now that, previously required hiring a dev, having a program or project manager and doing these things. And so you have this kind of rapid implementation curve where previously you did. Now, the trick is, to your point, rapid adoption means that there's less time spent on the necessary fundamentals of how does this integrate into my workflows? How does this, we're band-aiding, we're patching problems that historically required going through accounting or purchasing and whatever in order to find us. The vetting becomes different, right? The vetting becomes, can I run it locally? Does it solve my immediate problem? With not a lot of longitudinal thought about the end result of this. And that becomes, it's exciting and terrifying all at the same time, right? It's that duality of what we're kind of running into.
Yeah, it is exciting and terrifying. And those of us who've been in IT, well, like the three of us, for a long time, I think that we see a lot of parallels to that old, PC revolution when everybody, IT. I guess it wasn't really even called IT, MIS, whatever they called it back then. Had this sort of centralized top-down mentality of computers, and then people in like sales and product and marketing saw what spreadsheets could do and saw what word processors could do and went out and bought an Apple II or an IBM, PCXT or whatever, brought it in, set it on the desk and went for it. I mean, my first job, when I was still in high school, I worked for a company implementing a DB2 database for a marketing group, and that was literally on a PC that existed in marketing, and the central IT department knew nothing about it. I mean, we literally saw this. The same exact thing is happening with these AI tools. Essentially, people are, and were literally from the moment ChatGPT was released, people were putting their credit card in or not and throwing stuff at the chatbot and using it as a way to accelerate and automate their daily jobs. And I think that it's true that some companies have embraced that, some companies have not. But embrace it or not, it is getting used and it is everywhere. I mean, you guys are in the development side. What do you see?
Well, I mean, we moved from BYOD to BYOAI, right? Like it's now, what are you bringing in? Like I worked with a wonderful gentleman at ML Commons, right? And so we get on calls and we have our weekly stand-ups and whatever. And he's in IT and he's supporting the organization from that standpoint. He's like, "Oh, I got an agent that can do that." Like, like this would not be the term that I would have used. I mean, we never used this at Dell, right? Like going back, it was, we got people for that, and it's that literal shift from like, it's not necessarily people anymore. It's now this tightly coupled or loosely coupled or whatever, thing that we paid for to kind of get the job done. So I mean, it's a fascinating turn, like you're saying. It's no longer this, you know shadow box that's sitting in a corner. So now a shadow entity that exists beyond the firewall that you're somehow trying to interact with, and then protect your privacy and your data when it comes down to it. So yeah.
I draw a lot of correlation to the experiences that I observed and we went through with the shift to cloud and then also the DevOps movement. Those two right there for me are playing out almost, step by step as in AI as they did in the past. And very much so, early days clouds, just like what you were saying. I was just thinking back to the day when we would pull up AWS console and see like 97 instances, all of them named like 147.236.98. And it's like, who the hell owns this stuff? And I'm starting to see that in these AI workflows, especially stuff that I build. I could iterate very, very fast through building applications, through building infrastructure, all of that. But then over time, it's getting it all into a cohesive group, and that I guess that comes with the maturity of all this.
Yeah, and I think that just like you're right, just like cloud, totally the same situation. There's a lot of players here, and there's a lot of products here, and I suspect that most organizations have absolutely no idea. I guess it's like SaaS apps. Like, most organizations have absolutely no idea which applications are being used by which departments in which ways, which things are important, which things are not. Not to make it too on point, but like one of the companies that's presenting at AI Field Day, Haiku, like their claim to fame is basically finding and protecting like data across like all the different SaaS applications.
Mhm.
Somebody who came up with that business model probably is looking at AI the same way and thinking, "Oh my gosh, like marketing uses Jasper, like software development, they're using, a Microsoft, Copilot. The sales team is using, Salesforce, Agent Force, or whatever. Maybe they're using Gemini. There's got to be a moment where somebody in high up in the company has to stop and say, "What are we doing? We're using everything, aren't we?"
Yeah. And then I think that's a lot of what they're starting to see right now. These engineering teams that are organizations across are that are really embracing this. That sticker shock of that bill hitting, of the amount of tokens and the amount of stuff they've been spending and doing, is pretty big. It's significant, and it hits almost every single organization, just like it did with cloud. And you got to weigh that in, and it's a I'm not exactly sure how we solve that right now. It's budget, but yeah, being able to balance how many tokens you can generate and use versus what comes out of it, I think will be a key metric very soon.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of data, like, yeah, not trying to even promote my stuff, but just in general, things are changing. Unlike Amazon, which you could predict that there would be, or AWS, you can predict that there's going to be a cost adjustment, a couple times a year, right? Corey Quinn famously would would remind you of the fact that there are pricing adjustments to happen, but you hit steady state after a while, right? The depreciation curve or the amortization curve, whatever you want to call it, it became table stakes, right? We know that we're going into Amazon. We know that this instance pricing is, and that generally doesn't deviate all that much. Still have your back end sales processes where you can go talk to a rep and maybe get a little bit of dollars off the top. But with AI, the thing that we're noticing right now is that all these providers suddenly understanding that they're in the pinch point between the infrastructure that's being served, so running on Amazon or running on OpenAI, running on NVIDIA or running on CoreWeave or Core42, any of these CSPs, they're suddenly in the pinch point of we got to supply our infrastructure, we got to figure out how to pay for infrastructure with our subscriptions, but simultaneously, that bottleneck, which Ryan, you just talked about, that TPOT or TTPT, right? The time to first token, TTFT, sorry, time to first token, or that response period, then drives the demand in there. You can again go on LinkedIn or on Reddit. Reddit's famous for this at this point, but you can go in there and say, "Oh my gosh, my cursor wasn't giving me the same outputs it was giving me last week," or this is not interfacing. Claude Code's pricing model changed, and now my efficacy model has just changed. Well, it's coupled to new model release infrastructure, and it's less predictable now. There's no predictability to it at this certain point. We know you're going to pay a lot, but what does that payment actually look like? Again, over a time sliver of a year or whatever. So when you try to budget and try to forecast these things, even if you're going to incorporate into, you know, your enterprise or whatnot, you're only looking at a very, very narrow window of cost that can vary wildly within that. And then you add on all the other enterprise features like Haiku would be willing to offer you, you know, guardrails, IDP, IDS, right? Trying to understand what's happening, where things are going, and trying to provide that in there, and everything suddenly end up back in the cloud model of everything's an operational expense at this point, right? And there's no predictability. It just becomes expense on expense on expense.
And I think that right there, enterprises are going to have to face the reality that local models are going to have to be a must. I don't think everybody needs to run full on infrastructure, inference infrastructure like the providers do. Enterprises need a handful of models, but we need a way to be able to host models up for users, and they don't have. They should not care what models being used. They don't. They do their job. But then that also comes with, all of the enterprise features that come on top of that, RBAC, auditing, data control, all of those things have to come on top.
Well, you need a way to characterize it too. I mean, I think that's the other thing. Like choosing the model may be a characterization of, okay, I know that this model can provide these particular features and functionality, right? But also this type of output and this type of return, right? Again, looking at time to first token or context windows and the things that matter end up mattering. So you need a way to characterize that up front. And ultimately, I think we're probably, and this kind of mirrors your point, we're ending up in that menu style approach to stuff. What can I provide my enterprise internally? I know what this infrastructure can do because there's a characterization of this infrastructure. HPE is dropping a stack on my site. I know they can pass this amount of data using, I was going to say power rich. They're not power rich. That'd be dumb. But they're using their server storage and networking, right? They have a characterization. They've done the benchmarking. They've done the characterization. Provide it to me, and I'm buying now based on what I believe to be the case. It's the premise I think behind AI factory type concept as well. And then you look at your models and introduce model velocity. I mean, if you want to talk about that a little bit, Ryan, model velocity is a problem too, because all of a sudden you have a drop again. That next week there'll be another iteration of an OSS type model, or there'll be coming out of China another great deep seek model, or choose your poison.
So one of the things though that concerns me about all this is, and it was the same with PCs and it was the same with SaaS and so on, is the question of control. Essentially, if you are the CIO and you are listening to this discussion, you might be saying, "Cool, but wait a second." So the corporate data, the corporate code base is being slurped up by like 12 different coding assistants. All of our product roadmaps and stuff are being slurped in by like three different marketing applications. Chat GPT sees everything and is coordinating that across across their models, whether they say it or not. And of course these models are famously incapable of shutting up when it comes to keeping private data private. Um, if I was a CIO, I'd be super worried about that. Not just because, oh my gosh, people are using the corporate card to pay hundreds of conflicting subscriptions to thousands, or to hundreds of different companies, whatever. But also because, oh my gosh, where's my corporate data? So, you guys are enthusiastic about this, but how would you answer? How would you talk to the CEO? How would you say, wait a second, it's okay because Brian?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to there's options, and we now know how to control. It's been one of those over the past few years that hallucinations, models going out of control, it giving just horrible responses. While it's not solved, it's way better than it was before. Definitely in the software development space, controlling models to build enterprise level software. While it is a skill set to build up, it's possible. Um, and so I do think we're, the tools that we're getting provided, the things that are getting built to hand off to us, those features need to start getting built in. We need, the OAuth control. And I I kind of have, the build versus buy argument kicks around in my head a lot right now. I can see spitting out software at a very rapid pace right now, with not as strong of a skill set as we're used to. So I don't necessarily need to go out to a vendor that sells a very generic style product. Maybe I can build a very pinpointed one, but then there's the tech debt with that, and then there's the ownership and the management. But then you don't have to rely on those vendors and those SaaS companies that we have so much money to throw at, or we're throwing so much money at. And we could probably invest that into the tokens we'll use to build and invest in the tools we'll build ourselves. I don't think that's an end all beat all for everybody, but what businesses it does work out for, and it matches up with, I think it's a good strategy.
Yeah, I think there's uh, some of the early discussions I was in. I used Cursor and Kiro and Zed and you know, choose your poison, right? And one of the things I determined very, very quickly is, like I suck at product management and program management and any of that stuff. And even today, still not a strong suit of mine. But one thing that it kind of showed me is to again elaborate a little bit on your point. you end up building in debt in interesting and varied ways now. It may not be technical debt, but if you're not conscious of what you're building, if you're not conscious of the processes, but whereby you got to that solution, you end up building yourself into a corner. So, for example, I can go out to Git and I can take a look at my repositories, and they're great. I mean, they were great little projects that I do. Now, me picking that up next week means that I have to go back in time. I have to think about what I did, what I built, why I built it, and the pragmatics of both language and syntax, right? What have I done? You start to, and that's just me dealing with me, right? And other people are certainly more attentive to their stuff and they have better documentation plans. But one of the things I kind of discovered and where I've seen actually a burgeoning amount of capability being delivered is this idea of kind of product management for AI, which is AI driven, but it's basically trying to maintain your context. In a weird way, it's doing what we expect from infrastructure, which is maintaining that context flow between user and application. And I think that's an area where I don't know if excited is the word that I would use, but it's an opportunistic kind of place where you kind of sit in the middle where enterprises could adopt this stuff, but as long as they kind of provide a plan or provide those guardrails and say, hey, you can do this, you can build this, but here's your documentation. I need a PRD for everything you do.
Yeah, and I've worked through a number of tools, and I've worked with a couple vendors out there that are focused on the customer story to PRD creation. And I've been really digging into that as well, building out workflows that can automate it, add to it, allow PMs to build full on prototypes for engineering teams to review or proof of value that could easily iterate. And then, yeah, from the software side, if you don't have a PRD and you're not doing like test driven development with AI, it's a crapshoot on what you get. It really is, and it still kind of is. You don't know what's going to work, what's not going to work. Does it do it the right way? Did it just full on skip stuff and added to do comments? I absolutely I had something running over the weekend, building and going. It was like a 1,500-page PRD, amazing as hell application, blah blah blah, and 90% of the API logic was mocked, and then the tests were too. And so I was like, yeah, I had to start completely over with it, and but yeah, it's one of those. We have to learn with it, and I guess one of the bigger points I'm saying here, I've been doing this for a year and a half, and I still get into situations where I catch sharp edges and get cut.
Yeah, I mean, didn't you just tell ChatGPT to fix all that stuff? I mean, come on, man. Um, yeah.
They always respond, "Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's a great idea. You're right, Ryan. We should do this." And then they don't do it. Say they do it.
Well, it's interesting. I think, well, first off, I think there's an opportunity for one of these big companies, and I'm sensing that ChatGPT or that OpenAI sees this and is working on it. And I think I'm going to guess that Microsoft, Google, and so on can't be far behind. I think they've got to be able to look at this and say, wait a second, if if there's already like 50 different users of this application at this company, then we're already a supplier to that company, and we should help that company get their hands around the use of our tool. Kind of like what you're describing, Ryan, when you open up the Amazon, console and you see all these different groups using, in your company using this tool. Wouldn't it be helpful? Wouldn't it be great if the companies said, hey, Mr. CIO, this is what's happening at your company, whether you knew it or not, and we're here to help you get your hands around this situation. For that, first off. Second off, I think that it really is going to be important for these companies to work together on control of data and not allowing data to be shared beyond where it is. And I know that they talk a lot about that, but I think that they need to reassure people about that. But then more importantly, I would say is kind of what comes next, because so far a lot of the stuff that's happening has just been LLMs.
Mhm.
Let's throw an LLM at it. But as we're talking about on the Utilizing Tech podcast, I know, sorry, spoiler alert, other podcast. As we're talking about utilizing tech, agentic AI is just around the corner, and soon we're going to see chains of AI deployed, just like process automation, that sort of thing, and these chained AI agents that are able to select tools and use tools and pass data. That is going to create an entirely new sort of software paradigm where you're going to have people building and deploying their own stuff. And you combine that with what we've been talking about here for the last 20 minutes about shadow IT. It's kind of like when people started using Zapier and IFTTT and stuff like that, and automating processes. Um, we're going to see that happening widely, and it's going to be users of Gemini on Google or users of Chat GPT and OpenAI.
Yeah.
They're going to be building their own kind of chains of agents, um, and there's no stopping that either, right?
Yeah. I right now I want to say that agents are everywhere. The adoption thing I think is going in reverse. I think I tie it a lot into like how Docker and containerization went. Next thing you know, everybody was looking around and containers were everywhere and they didn't know where they came from. Same thing. Agents are going to come from everywhere. Everybody's installing them. And hell, half the people don't even know they have agents running on whatever device they're using them on because we can't agree on a term for agent. But um, it is, but I think for most people, the fear is almost too much, or we lean way too much into it because you think about containers now, they're everywhere, but they're managed fine. They're tucked away. They're not presented to the users. The users don't care about the containers. They don't care about the AI. They care about the result. And so as we learn to pull that back and that why and that here's what we're delivering to you gets delivered, that's how it'll turn around, I feel. Until then, though, we're just like containers. They're going to be everywhere and we're going to hate them all.
Yeah, we have swarms. There's a gentleman I follow on LinkedIn named Reuven Cohen, who's a phenomenal, software engineer up in Toronto area, and he's been building stuff off the back of Claude Code for at least a year. But yeah, he came up with swarm stuff, and he gives proof points all the time. Like, hey, listen, I was able to eliminate this much by running a swarm of agents that have a central command and control. I mean, dude, it looks like vCenter all over again, right? Like back in the VMware, like command and control, everybody's interconnected, whatever. And anthropomorphize it all you want to. It's bees and the hive and all that kind of fun stuff. But like this ends up being, again, to your point, Ryan, just great at making points. Um, it's this sprawl of it's everything everywhere all at once, right? And you end up in like the movie, but you end up in this kind of scenario where you never know what's completely out there, and you start to get into purpose built agents that are only solving one little niche problem that might end up solving your perimeterization or security problem, right? Because you don't have to worry about that agent ever exceeding the bounds of this stuff. Again, ripe opportunities, I think, for industry and enterprise to kind of step in, consultants as well. Hey, did you know that you're running this off for $5.99? I will give you a report. Um, cynically as that may be said, but it gives that kind of perspective on, again, the assumption is now, like, to my point earlier about BYOD, it's not everybody's coming in BYO AI, right? We're all coming in, bringing our own AI, our own kits, our own mentality, our own kind of perspective on how we want to accomplish business. And when we enter into the sacred halls of a larger, small, medium business, enterprise, you name it, we're all coming in with this kind of set of tools that are in our pocket that now expose us to various degrees of risk and responsibility. So
Yeah, I think so. I think especially like early days of developers, or before the DevOps days, that was developers and engineers. You rolled in, you set up your local environment, and that's how you proved your worth, was how well you were able to work inside your environment. And I do agree that'll with AI as well, those that can come in and have a strong environment. But from an enterprise standpoint, I'm seeing very few people talk about this one, but I am starting to see some talk, is the fact of centralizing what we just talked about into a control center. So similar to like you would control your VMs through vCenter, being able to control your agents, be able to apply rules and policies and context structure across your PRDs and down to all your engineers and all your agents. There's a lot of work to be done there, and there's very few that are looking at it that I know of right now.
I mean, yeah, I think this is, to the overarching point here, how to enterprise get ready for this type of thing. Again, it's embracing the suck, as the case may be. All right, it's coming, and we're gonna have to deal with it, right? So it's not it's cautious acceptance. So it's going out there and actually setting aside time, effort, energy, and money just to say, hey, listen, what does this actually look like? Pragmatically, set up a tiger team. As much as I hate that term, set up a tiger team to go and evaluate these tools. Look at the practical applications of AI within your enterprise or within your business. Right? Can it solve a marketing problem? And always keeping in mind that people are the drivers of this. Right? I think we run to the tools quickly and we forget the people, and that leads to things on the news. Right? So keeping in perspective that people are going to be using these tools, and then people also have to be cross-trained and be able to engage in these things, and they need to be able to engage in these things in a safe and meaningful way. Right? That's the other part is what I experiment with at home is not necessarily what I'm going to be able to do at work. Right? So being able to kind of bring that policy in there. Then also I think you can, I bet you're going to elaborate on this a little bit more, but start to define your data sovereignty, your data security, your data provenance problems, right? If you're in a highly regulatory, regulated business, you obviously have a set of rules you got to comply with. But always think in terms of where could this be if if I didn't understand what the tool was doing, right? Where could this end up? And I think those are, at least off the top of my head, three things that when I look at enterprise, things that I caution people about or consult with people about.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree. Geez, your data's your business, and data's the new gold. Excel's the new shovel. So why not protect it? But eh, geez, it's going to be a difficult one. There are some cool security solutions out there that I've seen. You hinted on it earlier, Stephen, that transformer models might not be the end all beat all. And maybe, I feel next step is we start discovering more models, or the data scientists do, not we. I won't be discovering shit. But anyways, um, it's getting in there and protecting the data inside the models, or obfuscating that data inside the models so you don't have to worry about it there.
Well, and I would say one of the things that sort of occurs to me is that a good response would be to have a more proactive response and essentially say, "Hey, I know y'all are using, ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and Copilot and all these. We've got a corporate subscription. You're welcome to use this. It doesn't cost you anything. No more credit card bills, no more worrying about tokens or whatever. Use this one. This is the corporate one. It's pretty good. It does all the things." That I think is sort of the way that businesses can kind of help to turn this ship, essentially to embrace the fact that people are using these tools, and then direct them in the direction you'd like them to use to do. And I think that that's a more proactive way than sort of running around with your hands on fire and saying, people are using things. So thank you guys so much. This has been an incredible conversation. A lot of fun talking about this. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation continue at AI Field Day this week. So tomorrow and Thursday, we're going to be live, basically 8 to 4, 8 to 5 Pacific time, with Tech Field Day presentations, discussions, etc. And, like I said, we're going to be debuting this new podcast on Thursday afternoon as well. Check your podcast for utilizing AI, where we're going to have conversations like this literally every Wednesday going forward. So before we go, though, let's talk a little bit quickly. Where can we connect with you? Where can we continue this conversation, Ryan?
Yeah, I spend most of my time in LinkedIn when I'm on social. I'm not on Twitter very much anymore, but I can still bounce over there from time to time. I do most of my blogging, and most of my thoughts come out on my Substack. And you can find my general webpage, abstractryan.ai, and that kind of has everything I'm working on.
Oh, well, most days, yeah, LinkedIn. I mean, it tends to be where we're at. LinkedIn, I have my own personal blog over at A Quiet Little Rebellion, which is on my LinkedIn page as well. And then ML Commons, mlcommons.org. I mean, where I'm constantly interfacing with the work groups that we have here. Would love participation. It's a thing that we're answering or trying to solve some of these problems that are in a more industry consortium kind of way. So, yeah, love to see you there. And I'm also on Blue Sky, same name.
Yeah, absolutely. And ML Commons, I will reiterate that they're always looking for folks to contribute and join these. And I've seen some people that have really dove in there and gotten pretty involved in some of those efforts. It's not just a speed benchmark. It's a lot more than that. So it's really cool to see what y'all are doing over there. Um, And as for me, as I said, you'll see me on Tech Strong Gang pretty much every Tuesday here on the Tech Field Day podcast, occasionally on the Tech Field Day Rundown, more often, though, on other podcasts, including Utilizing Tech and Utilizing AI. So thanks for listening to this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe. You'll find us on YouTube or in your favorite podcast applications. Uh, Also, maybe give us a review or rating. We would love to hear from you. This podcast is brought to you by Tech Field Day, home of IT experts from across the enterprise and part of the Futurum Group. For upcoming events and more episodes, head over to the Tech Field Day website, techfieldday.com/podcast, or you can find us on TechStrong TV. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.